So good afternoon, and also I will say hi to everybody on behalf of Will Ruddick, who is not able to be here with us today. He's sorry about that. For those of you who don't know him, Will Ruddick lives in Kenya and is the co-director of Grassroots Economics Foundation, which implements community currencies in Kenya. And I conducted two field studies in Kenya working with Will on the ground, so that's why we co-authored this paper. So some context elements about these community currencies. So we have 5 community currencies which are currently circulating in Kenya. 2 in the periphery of Mombasa, where the first was launched in 2013. And 3 in the periphery of Nairobi, the capital city. So they are all implemented by Grassroots Economics Foundation. So it's a difference that we can reckon compared with community currencies in the European context, emerging quite independently from each other. In Kenya, they are all implemented by the same organization, and therefore they run on the same models. They share the same characteristics. They are also all implemented in slum areas. They target those particular areas which have very great needs, both in terms of economic as well as social needs. And maybe to give you an insight about the problematic that we face in those slums, especially in monetary terms, what is very stark is chronic times of lack of medium of exchange. So how can we explain this very quickly? There's many economic activities going on in these slums, but everything which is consumed in those slums is imported. And so all the food, all the materials which are consumed are imported. So every import has this counterpart of money flowing out of those areas. How do money flows in? It's by exports, and what do these areas export? It's workforce. So it's mostly men who try to get employed outside of the slums, and which by exporting labor, they bring in money. But we have a constant flow out of money out of the slums, and the flow in is very seasonal, very uncertain, as it's very difficult for everybody to get employed. So we have a minimum and changing over time flow in of currency, but the currency is always flowing out of those areas. So especially at the end of the month, we have times of chronic lack of medium of exchange. There's just not enough currency, not enough money in the system to allow for exchanges. So it's not possible anymore to conduct exchanges. So we have debt coming in to try to cope with this situation, but still insufficient. So the main objective, the main goal of those community currencies is to provide to those areas a complementary mean of exchange, complementing the national currency, in order to be counter-cyclical to the availability of the Kenyan shilling. So the purpose of this paper was to account for the challenges which are faced in the adoption of those community currencies on the ground, and because of those challenges, many changes have been implemented, and we're going to speak about two models. First, the Bangla Pesa model, so from the name of the first currency which was implemented in the community of Bangladesh, in the periphery of Mombasa, in 2013. And with time, it evolved to what is meant to become the Sarafo credits model. So I will talk about those changes, first about the challenges, and second about those changes. And we're going to use these two ideal types, the Bengla-Pesa model on the one hand and the Sarafo credit model on the other hand. And I call it ideal types because after they were first launched, those community currencies didn't stick to the original model of the Bengla-Pesa. They started already to evolve, and it's still a process underway. So the Sarafo credit model is not reached yet fully, but little by little, those changes that I'm going to introduce are rolled out. So the Bengla-Pesa model, which is implemented in those 5 slums, those 5 areas, is based on networks of informal micro businesses. So Grassroots Economics Foundation has the task of first recruiting micro businesses. We conduct an economic activity in these slums, targeting people living in those slums. And before to introduce the complementary currencies, there's a big task, very important work of mobilization, organization, and deliberation in each of these communities. So first, the concept of the community currency is introduced by organizing many events in these communities, gathering different stakeholders. So I mentioned micro businesses, but also schools, for example, churches, representatives from different groups. And people try to understand how the money flows in the economy and how would the community currency work for them at the local context. So it's already a stage of better understanding about the economic dynamics on the territory and reflection about the interdependence of people at the local level. So there's a process of organization, as I said, at the individual level, as people have to join the group if they are willing to do so. And to join the group, they have to find 4 backers. So what are backers? It's other community members who guarantee the integrity of this person, who vouch for their trust towards this person. So the idea of this backer system is to have a security feature in the way that if this member will fail to accept the community currency in the future, his backers have to step in to accept the community currency for him. So individual organization, but also collective organization. The group which is formed by these people gathering together have to register themselves as a community-based organization, so which is close to what we know as associations. So they have a legal independent existence under Kenyan law, and they're going to adopt their own constitution. So they're going to deliberate on the rules they want to give themselves to regulate the operations inside the group and the way they're going to use the community currency. So it's a very crucial step in getting a common agreement upon those rules. And the other main step in this process is also to design the vouchers, so the notes which are going to circulate, which depicts like figures of the local economy, like traditional economic activities or landscapes elements, for example. And it's only after all this process of collective organization, and once a critical mass is reached of about 120 members, that the complementary currency is issued. And how is it issued? It's issued by allocating each member the same amount. So every person receives 400 worth of Kenyan shilling. So the community currency has the same value of the Kenyan shilling. And each member receives 400. It's about 3.5 euros, sorry. So it's roughly the daily food budget of an household. So the idea is to have this community currency to fulfill basic needs such as food for the household. So what is very special, particular to these community currencies, they are unbacked and non-exchangeable currencies. So there's no reserve in national currency backing the community currency, and therefore it's not exchangeable in the national currency. So my main question in the field when I conducted my field study was, how does something which doesn't have any pre-existing value or intrinsic value, whatever we call it, becomes valuable for those people who are going to use the community currency? So how do social practices that emerge around this currency give value to this currency? So what makes the community currency to become money, actually, it's only the voluntary acceptance of it by members of the group. It's the commitment of the business network members to use it as a medium of exchange, which turns those paper vouchers actually into money. And its value can be seen as backed by the resources of these communities, which may have unused resources, which are unused because of the low availability of national currency. And those resources are mobilized thanks to the community currency. So trust here is very important, is key actually, for this community currency to be accepted. Because it's only because I'm confident about my ability to spend the community currency tomorrow that I'm going to accept it today. So it is this trust in the ability of the community currency to circulate, which turns it into money. So if we analyze the complex dynamics which arise in this process of trust building, we can analyze the situation as a social dilemma. So I take this definition of social dilemma in a situation of which the social payoff to each individual for defecting behavior is higher than the payoff for cooperative behavior. And all individuals in the society receive a lower payoff if all defect than if all cooperate. So what does it mean in our case? People can choose to defunct. It means to spend what they received, their initial allotment of 400 worth of community currency. It means they got access to 400 worth of goods and services from the rest of the community without providing anything. So they got those goods and services for free in a way, so a high short-term payoff. And the cooperation lies into accepting the community currency, which brings long-term benefits because it allows the community currency to circulate, and it fosters exchanges, and it allows for the community to become more resilient. So how do we foster this process? We can mobilize here Ostrom, and the key variables that she identified affecting collective action, so trust, reputation, and reciprocity. And the three variables here are very relevant because, as I said, every person is going to accept the community currency only if he's confident in his future ability to spend it. So it will depend on trust people share among them, on the reputation they have, and reciprocity is key to allow the mutual credit principle to be effective, because the community currency, once issued, only circulates if this principle is respected. Each member has to keep a relative constant balance of 400. If someone goes to zero, or if someone accumulates too much currency, it's not going to circulate. So we need this reciprocity, which depends on reputation and trust. So what I argue in my work in this paper is that to become fully accepted and to become fully money, the community currency needs to be institutionalized as a common resource in the sense of a slum. It needs to be part of a common institution in which each person finds a place, and each of them acknowledge the rules of this institution. So what we see on the ground is that we have a mixed situation in which roughly half of members are able to make the community currency to circulate. So for them, the institutionalization process was successful in the way that they are part of this common institution. But on the other hand, we have the rest of those members who are kind of left aside from the circulation of the community currency, and therefore it's not as inclusive as it should be. So I tried to understand why we have this mixed situation and why some people are not able to make the community currency to circulate, even if they are willing to do so. And actually it depends on, well, there's many factors, but the main one is that it depends on the initial level of social capital. Someone with a high initial social capital will be able to make the community currency to circulate, because this person knows a lot of other people. She has a lot of opportunities to accept and to spend the community currency. And on the other hand, someone who doesn't know anybody will try to come to others, try to spend the community currency, but very often will face refusal, because what we see is that people only accept the community currency from the people they know, because after they get back to those same people to spend back the community currency. So someone that I don't know, I'm not sure if I will be able to spend back to him the community currency, so I'm going to refuse to accept it from him. So part of members, as I said, even if willing to use the community currency, are not able to do so because of their low social capital, and the community currency appears as not able to build this social capital. So very quickly, the changes which are currently rolled out in making the community currency evolve from this initial model of the Bank La Pesa to the new Sahara credit model, is that there's a stronger focus on community income generating assets. So for example, in each of the network, in every network, a shop has been set up by Grassroots Economics Foundation, which accepts the community currency and which is supposed to create incomes to to evolve to a community currency which becomes partly backed by community assets. So the idea is to build more and more community assets which back a bit more formally this community currency. So from a strict mutual credit system, we keep this principle of mutual credit, but has been added the possibility of credit clearing, so people in excess of this level of 400 worth of CC become able to convert it into the national currency. So to conclude, and it's the idea of will behind this evolution. It's that formalizing the collective assets into revenue-generating businesses and guaranteeing the community currency. Against those resources, removing the need for member-to-member trust, which was problematic at first, and the collective ownership in shares of these cooperative businesses, and the good management and growth of those businesses has become an easier object to trust. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there questions? It's already 30, but we are better inside than outside because it's raining. So, who had the first book?
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have a short question because actually I was the whole time wondering. At first, I saw the experiment of Virgil. What you were presenting, and at the end, actually, I had this idea that actually you were presenting how society in which no money is used becomes a modern society in which you have loans and so on, right?
Another question?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Tristan. As you know, I set up a system in Central Java in Indonesia and 4 systems in Thailand. And you're saying that it's really important for member trust by referrals or as you call it, backing, and that you're looking at institutionalization in order to further reduce the need for member-to-member trust, as you say in your conclusion. I'd just like to know if you have other activities or what grassroots economics is doing to increase trust between members and also simultaneously reduce it in the course of doing exchanges, because we spent a lot of effort on those same things. Thanks.
Thank you. There were 1 or 2 other questions, as far as I remember. No? Okay.
Okay. I've also set up a system in the Philippines based a lot on Will's model, and I can confirm that the model does work in more communities. So that's one thing. The question I have is how is usage being tracked using the paper currency?
The exchange being tracked?
Transactions. So how is the usage? How are transactions or balances being tracked?
Mm-hmm.
One question. Your result, your observation about the fact that people without social capital are the losers of the system refer to the general conclusions on the microcredit schemes in which the poorest are not the beneficiaries. So is there something, a fatality in that, or what?
Okay. So I'll start with your question. Tracking is very difficult as first it's a paper currency, so we don't have data about as if it was an electronic currency, and there's no QR codes as the vouchers you showed me yesterday. So there's no tracking in itself, and there's little data unless researchers come on the ground, but also Grassroots Economics Foundation conduct surveys on the ground, but it's only based on recall data and questionnaires. So it's useful, but it also has limits. So we can have ideas about aggregate data, but not fine tracking. Stephen, your question about activities which increase trust. So there was many activities which were promoted by Grassroots Economics Foundation and by field officers. What they first did, and what I didn't mention, is the use of the community fund, because as I said, every member is issued 400 worth of community currency, but he only receives, is only given 200, and actually he receives the 400, but he has to contribute half of it to a community fund, which is used to finance whatever activities these groups choose to finance. So what they used to do was to organize cleanups in the slums to collect garbages, to organize sports events or social events, which expenses are paid using the community currency, and people people participating in those activities are paid using the community fund. So financing those activities had this objective of creating more cohesion in the group and more trust. And there was also other activities such as market days, gathering all those micro businesses to do some marketing. There was also directories which were created for the community members to know each other, to be able to find partners in trading. So there were various activities conducted to promote cohesion and trust. Is there a fatality about this issue of low social capital? I don't know what. Of course, I emphasized on the challenges in order to think about the way forward. But for those who are able to make the community currency to circulate, it brings very meaningful benefits in terms of need satisfaction, but also inclusion in the group. And little by little, people who were at first at the boundary of the group can be included. But what was seen is that it was a very hard task to get those people who were first marginalized and to get them into the group. So there was a big effort of kind of community knitting in the way of creating new links where they didn't exist at first. But it was very demanding in terms of work in the communities, and also of means in terms of work and finance. So there was ways to overcome the situation, but it was a hard task in a way, and due to limits in financial means also of the organization, the choice was made to evolve to this model, which is meant to be more effective and more efficient in a way. The last question, I'm not sure I got you. So you're proposing that.
At the beginning, I had this idea that you were actually just representing only in Kenya the experiment of Wörgl and Schwankirchen, or Seekirchen. And at the end, I had actually the impression that you were starting actually, it was like a society in which no money was used, becomes a modern society where you have also credits and funds and so on and so on. What is impression, right?
It's not at all a society where no money is used. Money is used. There's many different monetary practices that we could speak about, like sending money to people. You know, Kenya is a home of M-Pesa, so M-Pesa is meant to have a big role in those monetary exchanges. So we are not in a situation in which we have a society which doesn't use money. But the fact was that money was, as I said, missing at several times of. So it's not an evolution from what would be a traditional society without money to a modern society with money. There's nothing like this. Yeah, and more if we could summarize the community currency as a tool to formalize existing trust and existing monetary practices which were carried out using debt mostly, and transforming these debt relations in more efficient and more multilateral monetary exchanges, to sum up very quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to stop now.